Hey everyone, it is Shakes, and today I'm going to be showing you guys the true Valorant matchmaking tier list. Now, not to discredit any of the other tier lists on this site, and there are indeed many of them, but the truth is the majority of these players are playing at Immortal and Valorant ranks, alongside always playing in a 5-stack or playing with friends, and never really experiencing the game at the true solo queue Silver 3 way it was meant to be played. In all honesty, that is probably as far away as possible from how the game is really meant to be played, but it is how the vast majority of people will be experiencing the game. Now, what does this mean for everyone? Well, almost all the other tier lists have a false notion to expect that you do have teammates with their monitors turned on, and expect that you guys can work together and combo abilities to win rounds. If you've ever played in solo queue, you know that's as far away from the truth as possible. So, being a player who's actually played from the bottom of the iron ranks and has ranked up 7 times in 2 days, you can probably assume that I have no life, which you'd be correct assuming, but more importantly, that I have a great understanding of which heroes, classes, champions, whatever they call it, are the best for the matchmaking experience. So, without further ado, let's get into the rankings. Now, first things first, we're going to be going over Brimstone. Now, Brimstone is always going to be, even in the highest tier of competitive, he's always going to be an S-class hero. And the reason is, he has those 3 incredible smokes. Now, forget about the rest of his abilities, they're effectively meaningless in this argument. He is an S-class because, especially in solo queue, you would know how hard it is to set up with your team to combine abilities or whatever to get a site take. It's super hard to push in because you guys don't know each other, you don't know how to communicate with each other, and with Brimstone's ability to put down 3 smokes super easily, he is just so essential for pushing into any kind of site. Typically for most maps on a site, there's only 2 or 3 different ways where, the enemies can pile into, so having the smokes available to cover up those areas will give your team such a big advantage when pushing in. On the other hand though, if you are defending, then it's super easy to block up all the areas on a site, so overall his smokes are just incredible. They're also going to have an impairing ability, which for example Omen's smokes don't quite do, which is super useful, which doesn't really allow enemies to really push through it and be comfortable doing so, which makes sure that enemies won't feel too comfortable pushing through the smokes as opposed to doing it with Omen's, where it's completely clear through the inside. So overall, he has the best smokes in the game. Also, his ultimate is pretty solid. If you know they're going to defuse, or if you know they're going to plant at a site and they don't have that much time, you could just put it on the site and then it's probably going to get a few kills and, probably deny them the bomb plant. So overall, his ultimate is pretty good, and it is especially easy to use. So along with his smokes, he's super good for this solo queue matchmaking experience. Next up is going to be Cypher. Now, Cypher is definitely going to be an A-tier agent. Now, he is really good because you can just put traps behind you and you're going to know if they try to push through, they're going to either destroy it or they're going to get hit by it. So you will have intel if they're trying to push behind you if you put it behind you, or on the other hand, if you're defending a site, you're going to know if they're trying to push through an area. So overall, he has so much intel ability, plus he can put down his camera around corners to, peek without actually having to put himself in danger, which in itself is so useful in this game where, peeking is such a big part of the gameplay. His ultimate is even better in solo queue and in matchmaking experience because you guys aren't communicating as much, and because of that, you guys don't have as much intel on where the enemies are. So with his ultimate, you're obviously going to be able to see where all the enemies are on the map, which is even more effective when, everybody doesn't communicate that well and everybody doesn't really give callouts to each other. His cyber cages are also pretty good, but nothing really to write home about, but overall he's just a pretty good package. But the only reason he's not quite an S is he doesn't have any ability to engage. If you're trying to push as a Cypher, you don't really have any utility to allow you to do that, like some of the other agents who might be higher in this list. Now, I apologize to all of you Jett fans, but Jett is sadly in the D tier. Now, if you've seen any other tier list, you probably can understand why. She just doesn't have that much utility, and she's just not that good of a character overall. Her smokes are alright, I guess. They're kind of fun to control, but overall they just dissipate way too fast to allow you guys to get like a site take or something like that. Her E ability is kind of cool, the dash ability, but overall it's not really that useful in gameplay compared to some of the other agents. And her Q ability, which allows you to get over obstructions or get to new places, is pretty cool, but in most scenarios the enemy is just going to hear you because it's incredibly loud in its current state. So overall, if you use it, all the enemies are going to know exactly where you are if you're like in a 10-mile radius. So overall, it's not that good if you're trying to be sneaky, and I guess it is kind of good for, getting up to areas where they might not expect. But that alone doesn't really provide the utility that you're going to need if you want to be a little bit higher on this list. Her ultimate is, I guess, alright, but I personally prefer having a Vandal or a Phantom in my hands than, her knives, because obviously they're a little bit harder to hit. Using the right click is a little bit finicky. They also are projectiles, which adds a little bit more uncertainty into, their usage, so overall I wouldn't say it's the best ultimate in the game. And while it is pretty fun to have 100% accuracy while you're flying through the air or moving, I'd much rather just stop and use something like the Vandal to take out my opponents. Now, next up is going to be our favorite Reaper clone, Omen, and he's definitely going to be in the C tier, and that's for a lot of different reasons. Now, it is pretty cool that Omen has a teleporting ability, but it is pretty short range, so it's not all that good. Also, it makes noise, which doesn't really allow you to be as sneaky as you'd like, playing the the edgy character in this game. His smokes are kind of good, but he does have less of them than Brimstone, so in that kind of vein, it's not as good. Also, they don't have any kind of impairment effect while you're going through them, so it allows them to kind of push through them a little bit easier, which isn't quite as good if you're trying to hold off a lot of enemies. His flash is probably the worst one in the game. You know, it slows you down when you're trying to use it, so it's kind of hard to push with it, and it's kind of harder to use compared to, you know, Phoenix's or Breach's. So overall, in a lot of situations, it's not quite as good. Also, you have to be a little bit more accurate with it compared to other ones, and if you don't directly hit them with a flash, it's pretty easy to see it going past you, so you kind of have an idea of where the Omen's coming from. So overall, his flash isn't that good. As for its ult, it's not the worst in the game, but it isn't the best. It definitely allows you to relocate at the beginning of a match, but if the enemies are in any way intelligent, they're probably going to go hunting for you and probably find you, so you gotta have a pretty good idea. A lot of, you know, higher level players tend to use just fake, so if, you know, you're hiding in hookah while the guy's trying to defuse, you could just use it and stay in hookah so they kind of look around and are kind of afraid. So that is kind of a more intelligent way of using it, you know, using it in fakes and using it in more intelligent ways, but overall it isn't that good because, you know, just relocating while the entire map and everyone in the game knows that you're relocating, it just kind of makes everyone check their backs and kind of look for you, and it kind of takes away a lot of the surprise of being behind an enemy. Anyway, for the next agent that we're going to be going over, it's going to be Phoenix. Now, usually Phoenix is in most competitive and higher level tier lists. He's usually A or maybe even B, but he's usually in the pretty high area. But for solo queue, he's going to be even better, especially for our reasons when, you know, you're not playing against always the best of players. He's actually going to be an S tier agent. Now, Phoenix is a lot better of an agent if you know that you don't belong at your rank. You know, if you top frag every single match, you get a bunch of kills, you always go positive, and you always do really, really well, you know you don't really belong at that rank. And what Phoenix allows you to do is he allows you to get a self-heal. He's the only other class in the game other than Sage that gives you the ability to get a self-heal. And while it is sad that he doesn't have that much utility outside of his flashbangs, it is great that he can self-heal in multiple different ways, especially if he gets multiple kills. If you throw down your firebomb and then you get 2 kills, then you get an additional 40 HP, so effectively you get 80 HP from just your firebomb, and then obviously you get all the healing from your firewall, which is a ton, so overall you can just heal multiple times throughout the round. So if you know that you're going to be winning a lot of engagements, he is absolutely necessary if you do indeed plan on getting a ton of frags and just going on kill streaks over and over and over again. Now, as I said before, his utility is not amazing, but the simple fact that he gets to self-heal, also the fact that he has one of the easiest flashes in the game to use, and it is pretty powerful. He's such a good engagement agent on top of the fact that he can self-heal that he just has to go in S for solo queue. Because while some agents have more utility like Sova or like Cypher, they have a lot of intel that they can give to their team. If you're playing in solo queue, you know that a lot of people don't communicate or don't really listen to what you're saying, or they just don't have their monitors turned on, as it tends to be in, you know, the lower ranks. So overall, having a ton of utility isn't quite as useful in the solo queue experience. So overall, you're going to want to go with someone, especially if you know you don't belong at that rank and you have really, really good aim, then Phoenix is probably the best guy for you. He has really, really easy flashes to engage with. You know, he has a ton of different ways to self-heal, and his ultimate is really easy to use and allows you to get extra frags. So overall, if you want to become a fragging master, Phoenix is the best one for you. That's who I currently main. I essentially play him every single match that I can, and that's why, because, you know, he has that self-heal, so you can kind of get as many frags as you want and heal whenever you want, on top of having a fantastic engagement tool, which is his flash. So overall, I think he's just a fantastic guy in the solo queue experience. The next agent we're going to be going over is going to be Sage, and if you know anything about pretty much anything in this game, then you probably know that she is an S tier class. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that she's even an S plus class. She's above all of these other mortals in this game. Not only does she have a heal that can heal someone to 100% health multiple times throughout the round, she also has one of the best ultimates in the game, which is a simple resurrect, and just putting those healing abilities aside that are already really, really good, she has some of the best defensive utility in the game. You know, having that wall is so useful if you know they're pushing through B, for example, on, you know, split, and it's, you know, a really tight area that they have to push through. You can just put up that wall and they're going to be forced to have to shoot it down, and that's going to give your team ample seconds to get to that site. Not only that, but she has her slow orbs, and a lot of people really underrate her slow orbs in, you know, the lower ranks. They don't really understand that it's that good, but people in pro levels, they're obviously going to understand that, and they take advantage of it every single round. It's so useful. Once a slow orb is below you or in an area that you're going to have to go through, there's literally nothing that you can do to make you go faster through it. It's going to slow you down, and if you have to rush to a site or something like that, or you and your team really need to rush through an area, then there's nothing you can do if she throws down her slow orb. So overall, she's just incredible in this game. She's way too overpowered. She's going to probably need to be nerfed, and I think they're thinking about doing that anyway, because she is a little bit too overpowered in its current state. But overall, she is going to be an S just because of how overpowered she is. You know, the solo queue experience hasn't really changed that much of, you know, how effective she is, just because she's so good that even if all of your teammates die before you get to heal them, you can still heal yourself and go frag out and put up walls behind you just so they can't flank you. So overall, she's just so good at pretty much every single rank in this game. So overall, she's definitely going to be an S class. And for the next tier, we are going to be going over Sova. Now, Sova is a pretty solid guy. He's not quite as good as he was at the beginning. A lot of people thought he would be overpowered, but in his current state, for the solo queue experience, he's going to be a B class agent. Now, while his recon arrow is pretty good, as people understand the game more and as you get higher and higher ranks and people are just more used to the game as, you know, time goes on, people are going to recognize it more and more, and they're going to shoot it as fast as possible. So overall, it's going to get less efficient as time goes on. His shock arrows are all right, I guess, but you know, you'd pretty much rather just shoot them in the face if you have the opportunity or if you know where they are. So overall, they're not that effective most times. His recon drone is pretty fun to, you know, scope out areas, but at the same time, while you're looking around for them and you might get intel on them, they're also going to get a little bit on you because they know where you're going to be scoping out. So they know that you're probably looking at that area, and if you just hide around the corner and you hear that a recon drone is coming, you know that that Sova, for example, is going to have a false sense of security and he's probably going to push in. So it kind of gives both sides intel in that scenario. So while it is pretty solid, you know, it isn't as good as some people may think in lower ranks. His ultimate is also pretty solid, and it is really good if you know that they're going to have to defuse or plant a bomb in a specific area, or that you just know they're rushing from like a specific hallway or something. But overall, the reason he's not any higher on this list is because he kind of depends on his teammates to work with him, to give him intel, he pretty much only reaches his full potential when he has teammates working with him. For example, a really good tactic that you can use if you're queuing with someone is, you know, you can put out your recon drone and go it a little bit farther and then have them right behind it. So once the enemy starts shooting at the recon drone, once they see it, you can just peek with it and they're going to obviously, you know, not quite be looking at you and you can get the kill. But overall, if you don't have people peeking with you or you don't have people going to work off your intel, he's not quite as good, which is why, you know, maybe on a competitive tier list for, you know, higher level players like in Immortal and Valorant ranks, he might be at A tier probably, but for us he's going to be B tier, because while he can get some good intel that can help you, generally your teammates aren't really going to focus up, and it's going to be kind of hard to communicate that intel with your teammates having their headphones turned off, which tends to be the case, let's be honest. Now the next agent we're going to be going over is Viper. Now she's a little bit of a hard pick for me, you know, it kind of depends. I don't have too much understanding of her. I haven't played her for a ton of hours, so I don't have full understanding about where exactly she should go, but from pros, you know, other people explaining, you know, how good her abilities are, and seeing her being used in competitive higher tier VODs compared to, you know, in lower tier competitive silver gameplay, I definitely say for our solo queue experience, she's going to definitely be a little bit of a B class agent. Now bear with me, Viper means the thing is she just doesn't do enough damage. For example, with her smoke grenade, you know, the fake smoke that's green, it just doesn't do enough damage when you're moving through it. So overall, it doesn't really stop people that much. And obviously, that's not really the function of a smoke. For example, Brim has 3, and you know, the point isn't to stop people, but overall, you know, that's her only smoke, so she's not going to be able to cover that many areas. Her little vomit Molotov, I guess you could call it, is, you know, all right, but it's definitely one of her worst abilities. So overall, it's not going to help that much in her kit. But her poison wall is definitely something that is very important. A lot of times, if you find the perfect lineup with her poison wall, then you can, you know, cover all the areas where they could rotate to and, you know, attack you. So overall, she is kind of good in that scenario. But the only problem is it doesn't really do that much damage when going through. So overall, if you're not watching every single area of the wall, they could just slide through it, not take that much damage, and probably peek you pretty easily. Her ultimate, however, is really good. I personally think that is one of the best in the game easily, because for example, if you pull out your ultimate and cover the entire area in a poison cloud, then I think you'll have a pretty good chance at taking over and winning the round, just because you have such a massive advantage when you're staying in there, because, you know, obviously you can see from farther distance. So overall, I think it is super useful at allowing you to plant or defuse a bomb, and overall it's just so useful in clutch situations. Now B, keep in mind that B does not mean they are bad. They are pretty much average, or maybe they're a little bit better than average. The only people I'd say are worse than average are probably, you know, people in D and maybe C, but overall she is pretty good. As time goes on, we'll see how useful she is, because obviously everybody doesn't know every single little trick and every single little detail about them quite yet, because, you know, obviously there's still things to discover and learn about these heroes. But overall, I would say as an agent, she is B in the solo queue experience, and a lot of that reason is because, you know, if you put up those walls, if you set it up perfectly yourself, you can't really expect your teammates to go along with it. You know, a lot of times they push to the wrong areas. One time, when I was playing with Viper, I had a pretty good lineup on the A side of split. There's a really good one that kind of covers all the areas where they can peek you from, but again, my teammates just ran through it and they just went to heaven. They just kept messing up. So overall, I would say say you can't really work with your team too much, and kind of Viper's kit kind of depends on that. So she's currently in the B if you're planning to solo queue to Valorant rank. Now the next one we're going to be going over is going to be Raze, and I definitely say right now in her current state she belongs in the C tier. Now I may have just angered a few Raze fans, I'm sorry the few of you, but it's pretty simple. She got nerfed because her paint shells were too overpowered, and now she has less of them, and overall that's her best ability. Her rocket is really just not that good, and as time passes on, the reason she was so good originally was not only that she had 2 paint shells, she had 2 grenades that are overpowered. It was more that everybody was new to her, not that many people knew about her, and you know, the more time that we have in the game, the more we're gonna get used to her, and she has literally 0 utility. She just pretty much does damage, and the thing about those kinds of agents, you know, as time passes on, they're going to have the most appreciation. As time passes, they're going to be the ones that we counter the most because we're just used to it. The second we hear, you know, the paint shell is getting shot out, we're going to move out of a crowded area. So overall, she's just going to get worse and worse as time passes on. So I don't think she's going to be that good as, you know, you move up the ranks. And as you move up the ranks, she's going to get worse and worse. If you go down the ranks, it's actually the opposite. You know, I think in Iron, maybe she's even an A-class agent just because nobody's going to expect it, nobody's going to be used to it. But if you play with anybody that has more than 10 hours in the game, you're probably going to be used to, you know, seeing her paint shells and understanding when her rocket's going to be pulled out and just memorizing those kinds of verbal cues. So overall, she's just not that good, and she's just going to get worse continually as, you know, the game gets older and people are used to hearing, you know, whenever she's going to pull out her rocket launcher or pull out her stupid nades. Now the last man on our tier list that we have not chosen for is going to be Breach, and he's definitely going to be an A tier agent. Now, if you've ever seen a Valorant tier list before from a competitive or a very high level player or a pro, then you're probably going to see the Breach was actually S, and the reason for that is he has some of the best abilities in the game and probably the best ultimate in the game. But the reason he's a little bit lower, and he's not even that much lower, he's only 1 rank down, so don't get too mad, is because a lot of his abilities are really best utilized when your team is working around them and ready to push whenever you shoot a flash at the wall, or ready to use your ultimate while your team is ready to, you know, peek all of them. Just overall, a lot of his abilities kind of require your team to work with you, and if they do, then he's going to be so overpowered. If you have a 5-stack, he's probably the best guy in the game, but if you don't know anybody, if you're playing solo queue, then he's maybe not as good. His abilities are some of the best in the game, you know, on their own, because he has, you know, his flash is supposedly the best in the game. It's really easy to use as well, but if you don't really have a team working with you to utilize the advantages that you give them as Breach, then he's just not quite as good, because, you know, he is pretty good on his own, but it gets so much better when he is, you know, assisted by his team who actually are ready to act when you use your abilities. So overall, he is really good, but it's just kind of weakened a little bit by the fact that, you know, a lot of his abilities are best used when your team is working along with you. So yeah, that is my Valorant tier list for competitive players who aren't at the highest ranks and who aren't playing in 5 stacks or 3 stacks or stacks. I don't know why you're stacking people up, but overall I think this tier list is pretty much as best as you can get it for the majority of ranks when you're playing alone. Because for example, Sova and Viper are really good agents, but if you don't have a team working with you and they aren't ready to push and play off of your abilities, then a lot of the potential is just going to be wasted, and you know, that's probably why you get into a 5 stack. So you're not playing someone whose half of his abilities are kind of dependent on his team working with them. So if you guys want to climb to the highest ranks in Valorant through solo queue or just queuing with one other person, then probably you're going to want to go with the S or the A tier agent. So yeah, that is pretty much the video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. This is pretty much all of my opinion, but it's based entirely on fact, so I'd say it's pretty much fact. And yeah, thank you guys all so much for watching. Hope to see you guys in my next video. Subscribe, like, whatever you're supposed to say, and yeah, see you guys in my next video. Peace.